Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Amber, and well, basically all of us. We want to talk a little bit more about our situation and our host, and sort of how we came to be just a little bit more, and sort of what's going on with us right now. And we'll be writing this in our blog as well. We have a blog called kitten.us.wordpress.com. I think that's the thing. I'll put the link in the description or someplace. Okay. So I came up with a pretend name for our host, which is going to be Sage, and our host friend is going to be Jane. Again, I hesitate to share any videos that actually have this person in it, because I don't want people linking us to the actual person's account that has been online before. It might happen probably, especially if people know, have watched this person's videos for a few years that she's been doing them. But like I said, if you make the connection, please don't say, oh yeah, that's that person, oh my goodness, like you're lying or whatever, or tell people, because we want this to be our place to talk and connect with other multiples and stuff like that. If by chance she ever wants to make her own video about this, she's free to do it. But like I said, I want this to be our place. So her name will be Sage, and her friend's name will be Jane. And unfortunately, I wish I could share things like that her friend made, like videos of her cat, our cat, but we just can't right now. Anyways, so more about our host. Like I said, she's 30. She's dealt with mental illness all her life. She had a lot of unhealthy stuff happening in her family emotionally all her life, growing up. And she has had a lot of therapy. She basically, she did go to school for counseling, has a bachelor's in counseling, and then actually moved out here out to Chicago, to a place for the blind, because we are blind. And she was there for a while. She made some good friends. She was very talented. She did helped with the choir. She helped with getting interns and social work things and things like that. She really helped with a lot of different things. But I think that she had a lot built up. She self-harmed a lot. She had a lot of depression. She's always been a very sensitive person, a very emotional person, and just a lot of complex thoughts and feelings, and no one really understood her. And there might be other stuff going on, like a lot of self-identified autistics meet her or hear about what's going on with her and say, not to label, but that sounds kind of autistic, and she had a really good connection with this one, actually a system, and they are autistic, and they talked, and it was like she was kind of like, oh yeah, now I know why I couldn't really socialize with even blind people, because my whole, she just could never make those connections. But that's a whole other story. So things really built up for her. She wasn't getting the med management she should have at all. This place for the blind said they were going to do. They had all this mental health stuff to do, therapists, and they knew all about it and everything else like that. But they didn't. They just had a psychiatrist that came in every so often, and he barely, did anything with her meds. And then she was at an outpatient place, and they sent her to this other psychiatrist who put her on Wellbutrin, which actually worked. Now, along with Zoloft that she was on, which is actually a combination of meds that's supposed to work, that can work really well. Unfortunately, she did have seizures from it. She had one in March of 2013, and she went to the hospital, and they did all sorts of tests, and they thought it was just because she fainted, but we know, it was pretty clear that she had a seizure, and so she stayed on the medicine though, because she couldn't find anything else that would work, and she had really limited access to psychiatrists, and And then they raised her Zoloft quite a bit around October of 2013 because she was planning to go back to see her family in December, and that would have been the first time she saw them since 2012. And there was still a lot of dysfunctional stuff going on. She was very afraid of going back and having to deal with her anxiety, her depression, which still hadn't gotten any better, and it had kind of gotten worse because she didn't have the supportive therapist that she had when she was in Massachusetts, but she knew that her family wouldn't understand. And she just had a lot built up. I think she might have been kind of suicidal in the way back of her mind. And then when she had the seizure on November 10th, it really pushed things over the edge, and it just clicked into place for her. And so she had a plan, but it didn't work. She was gonna cut herself with glass and just assume she would pass away. But the nurse at the facility that usually leaves at like 9 at night was there at like 9:30, 10 to hospitalize another resident, which is rare, and heard the glass smash. And so then she kind of had to own up to everything, and that's when she was in the hospital. And so she was in the hospital, and she was like, well, I'm not going to go back to this place for the blind because there are a lot of people with mental illness who are at this place. They don't do well. You know, they are in and out of the hospital. No one cares about them. They're over medicated. And she's like, I'm not going to, people are going to make me be alive. I'm not going to do that. So she knew about these facilities that were at one time called psychiatric nursing homes at that time, and they're now called specialized mental health rehabilitation facilities. And they're one-of-a-kind type places, as far as we know, in Illinois. They're big buildings. They will serve like hundreds of people. The smallest amount is like 90, I think, at one of them. Most of them have double, triple, or four-person rooms, although now that's changing. But they just serve all these different people with, different depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, substance abuse. It's pretty easy to get in. They have a screener come from an agency and talk to you, and basically you get me. I mean, it was very clear she needed that support. She was extremely suicidal and everything else like that. So, but getting in was a huge issue because we're blind. And it should never have been a discrimination thing, but it was. And she stayed almost 3 whole weeks waiting. And so this one place finally took her. And again, I'm not going to use the name, but they took her, and she really spent almost a year, trying to even want to live and get her life on track. And she had a really good therapist, and she had a really good, she met this friend of hers that is still her best friend and like a sister, but also kind of like a partner. It's very strange. We'll say more about that later, but in other videos. But she's 40, and they have similar issues, and they really connected. And for each of them, it was their first really deep friendship, and it had its ups and downs, and I think it has its ups and downs now. But for the purposes of this story, it really turned her life around to the positive, and she started to do better and better and better. And finally, when it got to be, this past year in 2017, she really was like, well, I want to move back to where my parents live, and it's a totally different culture out there around mental health, just more creativity, more flexibility, and different opportunities for volunteering, peer support stuff, and things that she really is passionate about. So last summer of 2017, she went to a conference. She found out about a conference in Boston that was on mental health stuff, and she was like, oh, this is great, I can go to the conference and see my parents. And lo and behold, she raised the money, and she made it happen. Her family made it happen, and it was amazing. Her friend got to meet her family, and it was just great. And things had changed so much in the family, and she had changed, and it was wonderful. And I think she was on such a high, and then she came back, and her therapist, who is the clinical director, always has had problems with consistency, and he really was doing a lot of things with this facility and I guess becoming like the CEO or whatever and going through all this transition. So he didn't see her. And she gets into this place where she's like, I don't need therapy. I don't need anything. I'm good. And so she was like, I'm great. I don't need it. Even though she was depressed, she's like, I'm just going to keep going. And when it got to be, I think late October of 2017, she did have her antidepressant raised, her Lamictal raised, and there was one psychiatrist that's really not very great. I mean, she had to like talk her through how to raise the medication, which is stupid. And so then finally, the therapist got time to see her, and before their appointment, a couple days, she noticed that she was having trouble breathing when she was anxious, and she wrote, she wrote him about it, and then when they were talking, she really couldn't verbalize what she was feeling, but then he said, what is different about this anxiety? And she says, well, I really can't breathe. And she kind of like, not fell forward, but sat forward and grabbed onto the desk and, felt like she couldn't breathe for a good 15 minutes. And that was a panic attack. And so that was her first panic attack, and she felt like someone was trying to kill her. And the therapist just had her sit and wait it out. I don't know if that was like the best way to go, because I've seen different things on panic attacks where the person helping is more active and helping them actually calm down. But he was like, well, we need to just let your body do this, so you'll be okay in the end. But so she had several panic attacks that session, and they put it down to stress and transition, because by then she had decided, she'd stopped being manic about moving, and because she was like, I want to move, I don't care if I live with a stranger or whatever, so then she was like, okay, her friend never convinced her, please don't do that, we're scared for you, and so they said, why don't we go to this smaller place, because this smaller place has single rooms. You'll notice we're not in a double room. This place has single rooms, and you can have a kitty. Yes. Well, that's another big story, but they allow animals, and it's more independent. Like, we can have cleaning stuff if we want to clean. It's smaller comparatively. Our other place was like 400 people. This is like 200 people. They have different groups. I mean, for her outlook was, I'm doing so stable that it's going to be, just keep me stable. I'll go to groups. I'll have my meds stable until my family is ready to have, her and her friend move back there, because they sold their house that they had for years. And then, and they moved. So she was like, okay, I'm going to do that. So she came and saw the place, and then she started feeling really weird over the weekend, like her hands were detached from her body, or like when she was touching something, felt like she was just touching it for the first time. And I think that was us kind of starting to come out into her consciousness and kind of interfering with things, because she wasn't feeling, like it was just her and her mind anymore. She was sort of sensing strange things going on. And then that Monday, she had a session with the therapist, and that's when she was dissociating the whole time. And we were out at that time. It was Honey, and Co was around, but she wasn't out for that session. And there was a few different people, and some of them aren't around very much anymore at all. But that's what kind of started it. And then for the next few weeks, everything continued. Her friend got the pleasure of a couple weeks with a very new to the world Honey, and that was interesting. And at that point, she had no idea what was going on at all. When she would not be in awareness, and now she kind of knows a little bit, but she ignores it. So basically, she had these symptoms. She was terrified, and so were we. Her whole body and brain was really in a horrible state. As I said in another video, they hospitalized her for basically no reason. None of us were suicidal. None of us were self-harming. None of us were aggressive. None of us were doing anything to mandate or even concern any kind of hospitalization. But we think now that the clinical director and staff there had been letting it go and seeing if it would run its course, and it wasn't. And so I think it was New Year's Eve. Things were really crazy, and they heard about from her friend. They heard about what was going on, and they just jumped into action without even telling her. And the ambulance came and took us in. So we came back and we were worse off than ever because we were just traumatized from the hospital. And so she was just horrified, and no one was helping, and she was having all sorts of problems with communication and sensory things, and then of course we were out, and so things have kind of what was that? Things have kind of things settled down eventually. We moved in March, but all throughout this, she has been completely in denial about that we're parts of her, or that we're, anything that should be in her mind. She's been saying we're ghosts, we're spirits, we're outside forces, we're foreign bad things, and that there's no way we're parts of her, there's no way that she could be multiple, there's no way, blah, 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 she doesn't have a dissociative disorder, and so for a while, she kind of, we were out, and she said, well, I have these, these altars, and people, when we moved to this new place, just accepted it at face value, and at least they were tolerant. They would listen to us and talk to us and things like that, if we spoke to them. But they said, we don't know how to help you with this. And unfortunately, that was kind of a different story from when she moved in, where they're like, we're trauma informed and everything else like that, but they're really not. So, living here, it does have its downfalls when dealing with a serious mental health problem like this, where, no one has put a diagnosis in her chart yet. I don't know if it's because they just don't know and they're still thinking about it. Her psychiatrist saw her a few weeks ago and said that she does not have DID, to which she was amazingly thrilled, because what happened was that she switched caseworkers, where there was this one that was like, hey, it's cool, like, don't be, debating these others, and, let them be people. And I was so amazed when they said that. She's like, let them just be who they are. I was like, yes. And so was everyone else. But, she hated it. And so this new caseworker was like, no, we can't have you saying you have alters and this going on. We need to make sure. So that's when, she talked to the psychiatrist. And I guess he didn't say she had DID. He said that we were parts of her and that we represented stuff for her and that we were like split from her, but not totally split from her, which we believe we are split from her totally, as do many people that are multiple and know people that are multiple. But she wants none of it. And if she were to tell you the story, she'd say, I went to this psychiatrist and he says I don't have DID and he thinks maybe I have schizophrenia, but he's not sure. And he never made any comment about schizophrenia, and so, she just wanted antipsychotics and medications to stop us, to make us go away, and even if it drugged her out, and the psychiatrist is like, no, I'm not giving you these medications because you don't need them, and she has tried everything, like mentally thinking with her thoughts, telling herself she's one person, doing things that I won't describe that are, internally violent, trapping us and pushing us off cliffs and through places and to get rid of us, and this has been constant pretty much since we appeared. And her friends in the very beginning sort of got through the denial a little bit, but then, it really didn't work. And then definitely since she came here, she's like, no way, blah, blah, blah. She just can't believe that it would happen. And I think that with her other breakdowns, what was a big turning point for her was that she, like it or not, she was very angry about it, but she realized that her life had changed and that she needed to, kind of rebuild her life around these new issues. With this, she knows that this huge thing has happened in her life, but she feels like it's this huge nightmare that she will, she just wants to wake up from, and then once once this all stops, she will be fine. And it's funny because that's what she does. Like, if we're not around, and if she doesn't notice us or like hear us or whatever, and she feels, like she hasn't lost time or anything, she's like, I'm fine. And it's like, well, no, like we're here because, like, obviously she controls so much emotions and things like that probably a lot, we don't have any like trauma memories or anything right now, but it could be, but all our friends that are multiples, want us to explore ourselves and get to know ourselves. We are very pretty co-conscious with each other, especially like internally. we all talk to each other very well, except for some of the ones from early on. Some don't know that they're elders, but they're not very around very much anyways. And we talk out loud to each other, as you'll see in the videos, and we write to each other, and we're very close, and we're a family. And so, unfortunately, Sage's denial of this is what's stopping us from continuing to grow and to be a healthy system, because any minute, she'll fight us and do all that mental stuff I was telling you about. But then she'll get exhausted, obviously, because you can't, expend all that energy constantly forever. So she'll get exhausted and she'll just be depressed and she'll be like, I don't care. These things, whatever, they're not really hurting me. I'll just ignore it and they can do whatever they want. And so we just then were out and, happy because she's not attacking us, and we're just living life. I mean, we're not living her life, we're just living our lives, and we would like to speak with her and compromise and live a life together, just like we live a life together, all of us, that, with the exception of her. It's not like we don't want her to live her own life. I think the point of a system is, how do you live your lives together, But anyways, she'll be, so we'll write our friends, which are, a lot of them are her friends that have really been amazing to us, and everything else like that. And I will continue this later.
Ribbon. Web. Stop button.